Somewhere in your fridge right now, there's probably a carton of eggs, white or brown shells, sitting in little cardboard pockets, completely unremarkable. You've probably never once asked yourself why. Why chicken eggs? Not duck eggs, not pigeon eggs, not the eggs of literally any of the other 10,000 bird species on this planet. Because here's the strange truth. Birds have been laying eggs for over 150 million years. Humans have been eating them for as long as we've existed. And yet, out of every bird species on Earth, we built an entire global industry, ate over 1.5 trillion eggs a year, around one of them. One single species, Gallus domesticus, the chicken. So what happened? Why did one bird win and every other bird lose? Let's clear something up first because the premise isn't quite as absolute as it sounds. Humans never actually ate only chicken eggs. Duck eggs are a staple across Southeast Asia and parts of Europe. Quail eggs are eaten across the Middle East, Japan, and Korea, often pickled or served raw over rice. Goose eggs show up in European farmhouse cooking. Ostrich eggs get eaten in parts of Africa, where a single egg can feed a dozen people. Even gull eggs and guinea fowl eggs have their regional fans, but none of them come close. Chicken eggs make up more than 90% of all eggs consumed globally. If you lined up every egg eaten on Earth this year side by side, almost every single one would have come from the same bird. So the real question isn't why only chicken, and the answer starts about 8,000 years ago in the jungles of Southeast Asia. And if you saw one today, you'd barely recognize it as related to the thing on your dinner plate. It's small, wiry, skittish, and built to survive in dense forest, and critically, it lays very few eggs. A wild jungle fowl produces a clutch of maybe 10 to 15 eggs a year. And only during breeding season, because in nature, laying eggs is expensive. It costs calcium, protein, and energy, and a wild bird only does it when the goal is actually to raise chicks. Somewhere around 6000 BCE, early farmers in what's now Thailand, Vietnam, and southern China began keeping these birds near their homes. Nobody was thinking about eggs at first. It was likely for meat, but something happened almost by accident. Every generation, the humans keeping these birds noticed something. Some hens laid more eggs than others, and every time they let the heavier layers breed while quietly eating the ones who barely laid at all, they were, without knowing it, rewriting the bird's biology one generation at a time. Over thousands of years of this unintentional selection, something remarkable happened. Chickens stopped laying eggs only to raise chicks. They started laying eggs constantly, whether they were going to sit on them or not. A modern egg-laying hen produces around 300 eggs a year. Not 15, 300. That's not a small improvement. That's a 20-fold increase in output, built entirely by humans nudging a bird's own reproductive instincts in a direction evolution never intended. Here's where the story gets genuinely interesting, because chickens didn't win by accident. They won because almost no other bird on Earth had the right combination of traits to be domesticated this efficiently in the first place. Think about what an egg bird actually needs to have going for it. It needs to lay frequently, not just once a season. It needs to be small enough to keep in large numbers without needing acres of land. It needs to eat almost anything. Scraps, insects, seeds, so it's cheap to feed. It needs to tolerate being crowded near other birds and near humans without becoming aggressive or panicking to death, which some wild species genuinely do. And it needs to reproduce fast, so that farmers can breed the best layers into the next generation quickly. Ducks come close, and that's exactly why they're the second most common egg bird on Earth. But ducks need water to thrive, they're messier, and their eggs have a stronger, more divisive flavor that never achieved universal appeal the way chicken did. Geese are large, aggressive, slow to mature, and lay far fewer eggs per year. Ostriches lay enormous eggs, but a single ostrich needs a huge amount of space and food, and produces only around 40 eggs a year compared to a chicken's 300 for vastly more resources per bird. Quail actually lay impressively often, nearly one egg a day, but their eggs are tiny, about a fifth the size of a chicken egg, so you need 5 times as many birds and 5 times the handling labor to get the same amount of food. Chickens sat in a nearly perfect sweet spot that no other bird on the planet quite matched. Frequent layers, small enough to keep by the thousands, cheap to feed, calm enough to crowd together, and fast enough to breed that humans could keep improving them generation after generation. Every other candidate bird failed at least one of those requirements. Chickens failed none of them. Biology explains why chickens were the best candidate. History explains why they became the only one anyone bothered with. Chickens spread along ancient trade routes remarkably fast for a domesticated animal. They reached the Indus Valley by around 2000 BCE, moved into the Middle East and Egypt not long after, and were firmly established across the Mediterranean by the time of ancient Greece and Rome. The Romans, in particular, were obsessed with them. Roman writers documented specific breeding techniques to increase egg production, and chickens became such a fixture of Roman agriculture that they spread across the entire empire, from Britain to North Africa, cementing them as the default egg bird of the Western world centuries before anyone had ever heard of genetics. Once a species becomes the regional default, a kind of momentum takes over. Farmers already know how to raise it, markets already exist to sell it, recipes are already built around its flavor. Nobody wants to be the first person investing years into domesticating a brand new bird from scratch when chickens already work. So, generation after generation, culture after culture, the path of least resistance kept pointing toward the same bird, and every other species got left further and further behind. Not because their eggs were inferior, but because nobody had a reason to compete with something that already worked this well. By the 20th century, science took over where instinct driven farming left off. Geneticists identified the exact breeds with the highest, most consistent laying rates and began crossbreeding them deliberately. Modern commercial hens are the result of decades of this targeted selection, engineered almost like a machine built specifically for one job: laying an edible sized egg nearly every single day, on minimal feed, in minimal space. No other domesticated bird ever received anywhere close to this level of investment because there was never a commercial reason to. Why would an entire industry pour a century of genetic research into optimizing goose eggs when chicken eggs already solved the problem more efficiently at a fraction of the cost? The chicken didn't just win the race, it won so early and so completely that every other bird stopped being considered a competitor at all.